problems during development. But I just got the opportunity a couple of months ago to start our own studio here in Portugal. And we are NeoRonin Interactive, that's our name. Here's the team, we are a team of 4. And we're building 2 products at the moment. So one is a simulation engine that's going to be used for military applications and reinforcement learning. And then we have another product, which is a strategy game that we build on top of the simulator. So it's basically just us interfacing the simulation part of it with Unreal Engine and building a game on top that hopefully will be very interesting and fun for everyone to experience. Yeah.
Okay, hey, I'm Carlos. I've been in the games industry for, I don't know, 28 years now, so yeah, like old timer. And I had my own like studio back in the 90s, stayed for 10 years, so I know how hard it is for you to have your own like studio, manage like to sell it. It's 10 years later, and since then I've been working with like some publishers. Like EA, I was the head of the like studio in São Paulo a long time ago, and so I know exactly that this is super important, like the quality, like and being like efficient. And now at Kokku, I'm the head of business there, and what we do is like co-development with a AAA studio. So this is all of those topics that we are going to like talk here is what we have to do. We have to like do the projects by the time, because those games cannot be like as postponed. But there's a launch window there that we have to reach, and with the quality and the budget that is always being like lower and lower. So this is so I guess we're going like to deep like into those topics, and thanks Jeff for having me here.
Yeah, my name's Jeff Hilbert. I've been in the industry for over 30 years. Primarily, I was an agent where we would go in and raise funding for independent development studios. Now I'm an advisor and I go in and restructure companies. I've raised about $1.8 billion in development funding for developers. I've probably seen 4,000 pitches, 3,000 pitches, and also production plans. And I've also noticed in the last couple of years a material difference in the production plans and what they're doing with co-development, outsourcing, and using tools. And it's about time, because I was losing my mind in 21 and 22 and literally having arguments with publishers in meetings talking about how that budget's too high, how do we lower it? We have to do co-development. People's brains aren't smaller if they're not in the United States. It's, you know, he's heard that conversation. Just because they're in Brazil, the brain isn't smaller. So that is my background, and it really is, and we've been pounding on it, and now we're starting to see where companies are starting to be willing to go into low-cost locales, and they're willing to start using tools and co-development to really bring efficiencies development while maintaining quality. So I have a series of questions, which we won't get through, but I'll start with the best ones.
That's like 20 questions you provided?
Yeah, well, thank you, ChatGPT. So I do really want to start with, this is more of a catch-all. The best practices for efficiency. What are some of the most effective strategies that you guys have been implementing in the last couple of years to lower the cost of development while maintaining quality? I'm not going to say get to market faster, because sometimes that you have to increase the time to market. We'll start left to right.
Sure.
Well, my left, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Sure. I think the key to that is, well, I mean, that would probably sound obvious, but finding the right people, meaning finding the right teams with the right mindset, and of course you have to probe a lot, that are located in the areas with a lower burn rate. Might sound obvious, but that at least that's what we were trying to do, and what we did at Funcom for some of our co-development projects. Like for instance, I had a fantastic team in Estonia, super smart guys, but their burn rate was like 2.5 times smaller compared to a studio in UK, for instance. So yeah, but that takes, of course, more effort and you have to talk to the teams, to the people more. You have to really understand if you are aligned, how well their process is structured, what kind of tool set they're using, what kind of pipeline they're using, because with that approach, you really need to be super cautious, because you could easily burn your hands. But it's possible. It's one of the ways to reduce the cost significantly.
That's good. For us, I think the key thing has been transparency and trust. I think that's one of the things that have really sped up efficiencies, and the people we work with, we definitely spend the time to get to know them as individuals as well as a company. But we all find it here that when there's trust, there's way more efficiency, right? So that to me is, and for our group, that's really what we focus on first, and what we found to be that kind of efficiency and communication and being thorough and transparent in how we do things.
Yeah, I guess that's mostly, well, first of all, years doesn't really apply to us, right? We're fairly new, but the learning from the mistakes that people have done in the past, like the people we know in the gaming industry, our approach is to just do it slow and steadily, bring in the people that really make the difference early on, be lean about it, and really think through what the problem is that we are trying to solve. Because it's very easy to just rush when you get the money. It's really easy to just rush and get a large team to get things done. But properly thinking about what the problem is and what people are going to fix it, and set up a nice structure for that to be built is something that's really important for us, and that's what we're doing.
I think just to add something, like on our case is pre-production. We try, because like sometimes we think we can just like start doing what the client wants, but we are now taking, sometimes say, okay, let's add a few weeks here just to like understand what's the pipeline for the art, let's say, because maybe it's not the same as what we have, and then we are able to shift, like some people say, okay, we are going to have more senior people than we thought when we did the bid originally. So we are now always adding this time, 2 weeks or 4 weeks, even if it's a small project, just to make sure that we know the whole picture before we really start doing, because then we can save costs later. So that's what we are doing on.
And that's the trust, right? Like that's really what you're building, the team of trust, and that speeds things up.
And sometimes even after like we signed the contract, and then we talk, say, hey, you show me this, but the source code is messier than what we believe. We have to add more people here. And the client, yeah, sure, let's do it.
Yeah, technical debt is awesome. So yeah, and you guys said a couple of things, and I see so many production plans, and when we're in negotiations, they're always like, well, we really need this done in 2 years. What do we need to do? And inevitably they go, well, let's cut the pre-production. And I'm like, that's the exact opposite of what you do. If you really want to keep your budget lean and efficient and cut your development timeline, you extend your pre-production. You do not cut your pre-production. So the biggest mistake is never, never let anyone push you into lowering your pre-production. That is the most important thing to have lined up.
That's like that 20/80 rule. Are y'all familiar with the 20/80 rule? Yeah. I know you are. But the 20/80 rule is what? It's like the Petro's principle, like where you never heard of it. Okay, well, it's basically like you spend that 20% of time planning ahead. It leads to that 80% results, and it goes from like from farming to management and production.
From farming to farming simulator.
Exactly. There you go. And so that's something that we keep in mind a lot of times to your planning part, right? Like we'll push. I mean, even if we have deadlines, we'll push for that 20% of time of planning,
yep,
and it yields that 80% results.
And it's also way easier to switch direction if you only have 10 people on pre-production versus going into production, building a pillar that doesn't work, and you've had 30 people on it for 1 year. You then spend 3 months trying to make that pillar work, and then you realize that still doesn't work, whereas you could have figured it out in pre-production. Obviously a pet peeve of mine. So we kind of covered, we're going to get to co-development, but I want to talk about automation and tools. because there's been a huge evolution in automation and tools lately, not just AI, including AI. And we've seen tools come on the market, like everyone said, oh my God, we're going to get Unreal, we're going to get Unity, we're not going to need nearly as many engineers as we needed before. Then you look at the engineers and they went up. Yeah. So I'm not saying that Unreal and Unity don't make development more efficient, but an automation and tools doesn't necessarily mean you're going to need less people. It just means different people, but it can cut the timeline and increase the quality. But I want to understand, there's a whole range of them. I want to understand what you guys have found the best efficiencies with automation and tools.
Well,
including AI, which is normally.
Yeah, so I'm not going to really speak about AI because we're not at that stage yet. I guess to automate via AI, it's really not our thing at the moment because we're trying to figure out what we're doing first. And so for us, automation just means just using tools that allow us to build, for example. This is very practical terms, just build without wasting engineers' time on the building process, right? And these things are obviously very small and fairly obvious, but people don't do it as early as they should sometimes. And that to us just cuts a lot of engineering time. And that's something that's important on the practical side when you're building a game project. Yep.
For us, we use a lot of tools, and especially for art, because we have been doing some portings of really old games to a remaster, and sometimes you just have a bunch of 100 how can I say, art assets, let's say, that you have to upscale. So of course,
texture maps.
Yeah, exactly. So we have been building our own tools because there's a lot of projects that fall under the same thing. So now we have stuff that will save us a lot of time. And now we even have a sister company, in our group, that they are focused on building tools, so they are also helping us with this. So for us, in the art part, that's where we can save a lot of time and people as well, because you don't want them to just spend the whole day resizing the texture map, So for us, is key to reduce cost.
Right, and I think the entire narrative around automation tools, AI, generative AI inside gaming community has been strangely aggressive. And
that's mildly putting it, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that the take should be automation is not about reducing the head count. It's about increasing the quality and productivity. So you're able to do more and better within the same time frame, meaning that you would be able to do better games ultimately. So I think that's the approach, that's the take.
One thing that we found, at least been in my career, is finding really great tech artists that understand what the real problem is. Kind of getting back to the 2080 rule that we were talking about earlier, and just the whole basis of efficiency. It's
so hard to find.
It's so hard to find, and it's also, I think it's something that, especially for this audience, is something to consider as far as training is concerned, because it is hard to find really
so
great.
Hard.
And as far as how we've approached systems specifically, we're doing a lot with our motion capture with AI and those systems and putting those in place. On our art side, on the concept, we do a lot of what I would call preliminary sort of composition type work. We don't take the AI into final production, but we use that, say for instance, with a concept artist, especially junior concept artists that are learning about composition better in a very professional manner. We'll go in and say, hey, I need, what I would typically do, when I was at Bungie, I would say to my concept artist, I need 20 thumbnails of this stuff, which would take a lot of time. Now I can say, hey, produce 500 compositions, and I'm teaching them how to be art directors. Because the way things are going these days, especially with AI and efficiencies, is that we all have to be able to use our language to direct attention. And if we know how to direct attention efficiently and succinctly, that way all those things along the production line are going to be much better. We have that trust, we have that clarity, and things. And most of all, we make games, right? That's what we're all here for. And what are games about? They're about the fun. So that's one of the underlying things I think that we kind of miss in these kind of events, is that we're not talking about the fun so much as we are, because that's what we're in the business of, right? And we kind of sometimes lose that. I know Jeff has seen a lot of different versions of fun, but how many times have we played games or attempted to play games that weren't that fun within 5 minutes? I mean, like, how many of you have like played a game and like, oh, yeah, right? You're like, and that,
the number of meetings I've been in where something, they're droning on and on about something, I go, why is that going to be fun anyway?
exactly. I was just at a pitch like,
yeah, it was just, is that actually going to be fun in the game? Well, why is it in the game?
exactly, exactly. So that's like one of those things that I think as game developers for us to really make as a foundation on a day-to-day basis. What is fun? And how do we make fun efficient? You know, like getting to the core of the communication, I think, is where that's at.
Yeah,
He already spoke. You spoke?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess that there's a lot of micromanagement too at times where you're not fully communicating or expressing how you feel about the game. You're doing it through a platform, right? And the communication just becomes this thing where you're actually working on having efficient communication rather than it making the game itself.
Right.
And I think that's a very, very big problem because, well, if you talk to people who are passionate about games, which is your team, and the team really communicates clearly and transparently with each other, then the game becomes more fun. Also, a problem is the pursuit of the solution without understanding truly what the problem is.
Right.
And I guess nowadays it's so fast to just rush through an idea. And just without fully understanding the true scope of that idea and what we are truly building out of that idea. Because it branches out and you really need to explore in the beginning, but then you have to set a specific path and just follow it with clear communication.
Very good. I think like one of the cool things too about what you're saying is that it's really that efficiency of fun, right? If we're able to have a conversation and coherently describe in a way that's transcends ego, because I think like that's really where a lot of friction comes from, is when ego comes in and is trying to like strong arm what they think fun is without actually a proof, right? And so especially when it comes to code development where you're dealing with different types of clients, right? And you want to do what you're paid to do, but also like I always talk to my code dev groups and my outsource groups and saying like, you deal with all these different game developers, what's the best pipeline? You know, what do you know as far as a pipeline that is efficient or not efficient? And they'll be like, really, you're asking me this? And I'm like, yeah, I want to know. You don't have to tell me what the group is. But then from there, you empower the different groups, the code dev groups and the outsource groups, as well as your own developers, to have a much more trusting relationship. And there's where that efficiency, I think, really comes from.
Yeah, it's key.
Well, you said something important too, ego. And remember I said this pillar isn't fun.
Yeah.
People invested so much time and so much sweat, and a lot of times they worked weekends and this, and then you have to go to them and say, we're cutting it.
Yeah.
And we spent $3.5 million on it, and we burned you out, and you missed your kid's birthday, and now we're cutting it.
Or 400 million or whatever it was for that one game.
I don't want to talk about some of the budgets I destroyed. No, there have been things where we literally spent tens of millions of dollars, and we're like, it's not fun.
Yeah.
And then just having that discussion with the people who did put their blood, sweat, and tears and the egos, we have to sit down with them and get their egos and just say, listen, we know you did it. We're not saying it's not wonderful. We're not saying it's not implemented exactly like we wanted it implemented. Let's blame it on the designer.
Yeah.
I always blame it on the designer.
But I think like that's...
No, they don't like conflict, so they just kind of leave the room.
But the thing about that, though, is just like, it's so important to create that circle of trust to be able to say like it's not fun.
Yeah.
Without the ego flares up. You know, and that's as for the people in the audience that are working on games, if you find something like that popping up, then it's like have have those kind of crucial conversations to make that happen, you know, to come through that.
Carlos?
Just wondering about what you guys are saying, building like the trust with the client or the partner. Like in our case, what we do is every person that is working there, even if it's doing like a small thing, he or she knows exactly what is being built. Because even if it's a small feature, say, okay, this is a small feature, but part of like a bigger game, so that people feel that even though they are being like paid and to do it, and they are not the like IP holder, but it's their baby as well. So that's what we try to say to all of our teams. Say, okay, you are working now in this project A. It's your game. We are like an external cell of the publisher. So that's the mindset that we have, because then people start to like not work harder, but like smarter maybe, or pointing like some things, say, hey, maybe there's a different way to do it. And this happens. We were doing like a project, like the client asked us, do this. And then the team say, yeah, but why not do this other like approach? So we are not just being paid to do, we are being paid to think with the client. So that's is co-development for us.
It's
like
truly co-development,
Yeah,
right? I mean,
exactly.
that's the difference that makes a difference.
Yeah.
Is that you're helping your group like buy into that and that vision.
This is actually a different question, but I do want to, this is a good segue to go right into co-development. And co-development with this group, because I see there's a lot of startups in here too, there's a couple of ways to look at co-development. One, there's a big project, instead of doing outsourcing, you get a 2-year contract to build a full stack specific feature set, which really, if you're a startup studio, helps you build your team. It's a great way to build your tech stack. Rather than starting out and building a new IP, have someone else pay you to build your tech stack and gel your team. But you want to have that full stack, and then more importantly, make sure you're in the credits. Because then when you go out to try and raise money, or you go out into a next game, you guys are in the credits for doing that. So if you can, it's hard to get in the credits as an outsourcer. It's easier to get in the credits as co-development. But also, if you guys can talk to co-development, but I do want to switch it a little bit because of the crowd. Yeah, there's so many startups in here. Look at co-development versus trying to start your own new game. It's a really good way to cut efficiencies and build your team. But this is more about like how does it help efficiency. So I'll set you up with that one. That one's kind of really hard one to ask.
Absolutely, yeah. It's definitely a way to start, and it's definitely a way to build your team, to build good bonds inside the team, work on like the next gen products if you're lucky, right? Work and learn from the best teams if you're lucky, of course, but it is absolutely possible. But like when you are on the other side, if you're working with a co-development studio, and I had that kind of experience in the past couple of years quite extensively. First of all, you really need to make sure that the co-development studio and people there are almost a part of your team. So they are in the loop of everything what's happening. They do have a clear vision about the project, about the key goals, milestones, absolutely. And also, if you are on the client side, you are working with the co-development studio, you have to make sure that you're not getting a B team. Because co-dev studios often do that. They flip the team.
How do you do that? How do you make sure you're not?
Tricky.
Lots of probing, lots of LinkedIn research.
I'm going to get yelled at after this.
So let me just add on that. So for us, we think about especially outsourcing as being a very good solution for small teams too, because you don't really need to add to the internal team for some things, right? You build a really strong structure for the game to operate and for us to change data and still have the same structure there. And for example, if we want to scale up for a concept art, like for concept art work, for example, for us to imagine how the game is going to look like for the player, then we can scale up and down through outsourcing, and we can do the same thing for art pipeline, for example. So that's also a very good solution in the case of small studios, because again, co-development kind of is in between those two things. And it can really be tricky to just find the right partner there. And sometimes outsourcing is just, you can look at the portfolio, you have a good grasp of what they can do, you can give the straight direction of what you want, and get more, I would say, the specifics are easier, I guess, to just get the output for. But yeah, that's my
Especially concept art.
Yeah.
I've built a lot of 200, 300, 400 person teams, and we still outsource concept art.
Yep.
We literally, like, we have everything. They're like, you're outsourcing concept art? You don't have an internal concept artist? No,
Yep.
because we don't really know what the art is going to be at any given time, and we love Patreon.
That
I love
is so
Patreon.
crazy to me. Like, to not have a concept art team on staff. Like, they're the DNA of the game.
Well, okay, when you're concepting a new IP, then you do it, because if you're switching art.
Right.
That's the problem with concept artists on team. They do this art, well, now we have to do this art.
Right. Understood.
Yeah.
I guess it depends on the project for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And also, we are lucky enough that our technical artist is also someone who can do mock-ups and concept art. So what I meant is
really?
like, yeah, that's the good
What's his
thing
name?
about Portugal.
Her name?
Is right there is Mike. This is the thing, right? We do have an ecosystem with people who are very talented and just so adaptable, and the fact that we can do early concept art, but then when you want to explore more possibilities with that in mind, then outsourcing just feels like it's just amazing, right? Because you don't really have to have a large internal team for that. You can do the baseline. Okay, we are very comfortable with this. This is what we like. Let's just have a studio produce more with this in mind, right? That's the kind of outsourcing on concept art that I was talking about.
Beauty on like what you mentioned about how you don't get a B team working for you. Like in our case, of course, we conduct interviews with the client and all of the key people there just to make sure that like it's a fit, because sometimes you need like a senior artist. But during the call or like with the client, we feel there's no click, because maybe it's not the kind of game that this person likes or so, and we have to filter out some people. And also, since we do projects that are 2 years long, sometimes people start like super like excited about it, but then like 1 year later you feel that the energy level is going down, and we have to shift. So we do the like post check every quarter or monthly in some cases, just to see, okay, is this team going fine, or maybe there's a big issue in the project and then people get like stressed, so it's better to take somebody from another group to help. So, but it's a process, not that we have, but the first step is for the client to talk with all of the leads and see if there's a fit there, and then you build trust, and then you make sure that you're having the right people.
And I think like your question, Jeff, about like encouraging studios that are here that are starting their own projects to do co-dev first. One of the things that I would say about that specific thing is that I do agree it's a good idea, and that you get to understand pipelines. And in the theme of this particular talk of efficiencies, when you're first starting your own studio, you don't know what you don't know unless you've already been in the industry. But if you're just starting out, you don't know about like what's the best way other than what you've been taught in school or what your friends have told you or what you learned online. It's the best sort of approach in getting, even if it's small clients and working with smaller groups, to get exposure to different ways of doing and being and creating. So that's something just to consider.
Okay. As far as automation and tools, what automation processes and tools in the last couple of years, because once again, it's been just amazing what's been coming out in the last couple of years with automation and tools. I've never seen anything like this in the industry. And like I said, I've been in it for 30 years. What are some of, on a practical basis, none of you guys sell tools, right? No, okay.
No, we don't.
Yeah, well, no, it's important. So what are some of the best automation processes and tools that you guys have found in implementing? We have to be careful not to pitch a product if they do it, but you guys can talk about the best tools, though. What are some of the best tools that you guys have found to increase efficiency lately? Go ahead.
Well, the engineering teams that I saw, they started to use Copilot a lot more over the past 2 years, most definitely. And I believe like half of the code is now written by Copilot or whatever tool, ChatGPT. Even on the management side, doing lists, summarizing, and even like as a starting point for any new process, ChatGPT has been super instrumental in that regard, processing the text information for presentations and all that. It really increases productivity.
Does it increase it hits the quality for the engineering, and does it lower the timeline?
So, of course, everything has to be cross-checked if we're talking about engineering. But engineers, people started to use this more and more actively without reducing the quality. It's quite the opposite. Of course, if especially for the mundane stuff, right? If it's something super tricky, the machine cannot do that. But for something more rudimental, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I guess the key word there is the common things, the things you can that are fairly simple. So in architecture, for example, like having a very good structure for the project, and it's something you can't really get with those kinds of tools yet. You just have to have a mind behind that is really experienced in that sort of task, and gratefully we also have that. And that only comes with experience, like doing a lot of things and building for a lot of platforms. And you really need, I can't stress this enough, to build a core team that has the quality built in the people, right? Eventually tools will be something to add on top of that, where you're kind of just in a production process and you can automate some of these things. And certainly AI will get to a point where it writes quality code, but I don't think we're at that stage just yet. So from my perspective, one thing you can use that just bumps up quality and efficiency is using tools like Unreal Engine, because, well, the company itself, Epic Games, has efficiency and quality in mind. Well, you can look at the products that they release in terms of games, and they are super popular. So they are not building an engine just because. They're building an engine because, well, they make really good games. And if you just use those and have I guess, have the whole team using that, it just becomes so efficient for everyone to just collaborate on the same platform with the same tools, and it's so familiar for everyone. And that, to me, is efficiency and just pursuing quality through a very centralized tool.
In our case, I guess first what we are like ensuring is that people use Jira, let's say, is properly with all of the settings there, because you can also do some stuff that if there's a bug, then like immediately someone gets an alert. So we are customizing like Jira to become the central hub for everything, the single source of truth, because sometimes people use it, but they don't know all the features, so they use just as a task list, and then there's no point. So this is the first thing. And,
by the way, that's a really big deal what he just said. The best games and the most efficient games really take advantage of Jira. They
Yeah.
really, really do.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yeah, and the second thing is like a QA. We are trying to like automate as well some stuff, because then you can save time instead of sending a build and then having somebody like to do like a smoke test. If you can include this so that when the developer like finishes, he can test and see the results without sending the whole build, and then you just lose one day and get back to fix something that isn't fixed yet. So those are the things that I can mention.
Those are great. I love that like Unreal is brought up as far as an efficiency. And in my career, seeing engines be more refined and more efficient, but also like focusing on ways to get to fun, which is kind of that foundation that I was talking about earlier, is super important. And for us, like one of the biggest things is taking that 2080 rule of taking the time to actually learn the tool and making sure that our staff learns the tool thoroughly is super important. Like with Jira is a perfect example. Like we had some people on our staff that were so against it, but it was a matter of just like, hey, here's ways to automate and how to integrate into Slack, for instance.
They were against it? I'll talk to you later.
Yeah. I won't name
I don't even understand. Like,
but yeah, it's exactly. But that's why we're talking here.
Yeah.
About this sort of stuff. And also just to embrace like different ways of what I call like ways of play. So like I come from a very playful background of just like, how can I learn this? Come like lead with wonder, not judgment, you know? Like let me wonder about how this tool can become more efficient. How can it serve me better and my team better? Whether it be something like a Midjourney or ChatGPT, or like, for instance, we introduced Perplexity into as far as like a research tool, because we have Perplexity.ai gives you the actual source of where it's getting the information from. And so that's something where ChatGPT or Claude.ai is kind of a black box, right? And so those are the kind of things for us, that accountability, that transparency is super important. But I'll emphasize for the group here that take the time to learn the tool and then think about like what are unexpected ways to use it, and then use like something like an AI to ask those kind of questions and be self-referential. That'll help you also be better communicators and being more efficient in your group. Are you texting, Jeff?
No, I'm taking notes, actually. I've never actually given a presentation and taken notes from the presentation at the same time.
I didn't mean to call you out. Sorry about that.
I'm literally taking notes. Okay, go on.
Yeah. No, what else would you like to talk about?
Oh, okay, let me go back to it. I started taking notes and lost my questions.
You should be using Otter.ai in the audience. Otter.ai is something that's incredible. It'll just take what you're saying and put it into a text field, and you can put that in.
And we're going to ask questions. We have 2 more minutes. Can you guys tell me like an example of just a big mistake that was made that you can avoid in the future? Because a lot of times, I know it's a negative thing to do, but avoiding mistakes that some people make that seem obvious but aren't obvious.
That's learning right there.
What's that?
That's true learning. Like you look at someone else's mistake and learn from it, instead of like, it's like someone put their hand in a fire, and you're like, should I put my hand in the fire? No. But yeah, big mistake. Since I'm talking, I'll say biggest mistake. Yeah, like I think without going too deep into it, just misunderstandings on a project based on ego, which is why I brought that up earlier.
Yeah.
Led down to literally millions of dollars of just wasted time because we put something in a game that we weren't aware of because we didn't have thorough checks, and it was found later on. In this case, at Bungie, it was someone's butt. And we had to basically pull all that. This is back in the day when we had physical product. We had to pull from Walmart and everything else and put a patch in, and it was because it was burned on a disk, and that cost us millions of dollars.
A butt.
That's just because.
Which game was that?
That was a Halo game. Yeah. But anyway, that's the worst mistake that at least I could remember right now off the top of my head.
Trying to do many things at the same time doesn't really work out that great. Putting a lot of people into a project you don't fully understand yet is also a very big mistake. So yeah, going slow at the start so you can then ramp up and be stable during the later stages of development. I guess that's really important.
For sure.
Yeah, I can second this. Just don't try to do 2, 3, 4 projects at the same time, especially if they are like in completely opposite genres. For instance, if it's more or less the same thing, and the teams have expertise in one specific, maybe 2 genres, it's okay. But if it's I don't know, a graphic novel and a looter shooter, don't.
I think that one big mistake is when you have a producer that doesn't really know a target platform, because then there are some like certification issues that if the person never shipped the game to like Switch, there is a lot of stuff there that, and then he will not know what he or like doesn't know. So in the end, you think the game is ready, but then you have to include this logo here or that. Small stuff, but then you can like miss your like deadline. So for us, like whoever is a producer has to really know the platform, so we don't have those issues, because then there's no time to fix, or you lose the launch date. So this is for me one big mistake.
I bet you have checklists now because of that.
We have for everything, yeah. But even so, maybe you are adding another feature, like a telemetry feature that you don't know exactly, so you have to learn about it. So that, okay, this is going to take more time that or it has it's big risk. Let's use like an external, like a QA, just to make sure that we're going to pass this. So.
Oh yeah, there's another thing,
okay.
actually. Do proper QA.
Yeah.
Do proper QA. If you think that your game is good, then think again and try to use some external people, external studios to do a proper QA for you. This is extremely important, especially for premium projects. That can tank your game.
Yeah, and then we'll go into questions, and there's one last thing, and I see it all the time, especially because I work with so many independents. Do not get beat up on time. Do not let them tell you, no, you need to make it in 8 months. No, we need 12. Don't let them do it. Because if you try to do it in 8 months, it's now going to take you 16, and it's going to be a horrible game. Right. That is one of the hardest things that you guys are going to see in the channel, even internal, when you're working with VCs, when you're working with outsourcers, when you're working with publishers. Don't let them beat you up on time. And it has to be at the beginning, and they will always do it. And it is the biggest mistake I see people make all the time. Okay, guys, any questions?
Yes. Can you talk about experience? Oh,
Wait.
I don't need a microphone.
He's an American. He doesn't need a microphone.
We are recording, so you do need a microphone.
Now I got to bring my voice down. Thank you. Can you talk about some experience of embedding with co-developers? So the lead developer embedding with the co-developer, or vice versa, and the pros and cons there, to ensure efficiencies and quality.
Well, no true experience with that, really, so I'll just defer to you guys.
Well, we currently have, I think, 2 or 3 projects that a client is a team that it's as I mentioned, is like an external cell of the client. So we join all of the daily meetings like on their end. So it's the same team in the end. It took like 1 or 2 months until we really know like what is happening there. But this is what we are doing. For us, this is all of the projects that we have now. In the end, people are like working as if they were part of the client's team. So it's and then it makes things much easier and much faster. So that's how like what we do. So
yeah, we handle it the same way. We have several studios that are basically sister studios that are co-developing with us, and they're integrated with us, and whether it's Slack, Jira, all that sort of all those possibles.
Can you tell them where your studios are geographically?
Yeah, Czech Republic, Spain, and Croatia, and in Canada as well. Yeah.
And then how many people now across all these teams?
We have
including Sasala.
225.
So yeah. Any more questions? Just
I
moving
think-
on.
oh, there's one more.
Okay.
I have a question on vertical slice, and how early do you propose you can do it, and how detailed? Because you obviously mentioned the 80-20 rule.
That's a really good question. It really depends on a number of factors. One, who's paying and what they need to see and when they need to see it. Two is who's paying and when do they need to see it. It gets down to things like that. And for ourselves, as game developers, we also want to prove out whether it's fun or not. We want to prove out whether it's going to look good or not. And if our team is capable of it, if we do need to outsource or if we do need to do co-development, we have to test our own people first, so they know where to measure, like how much time it's actually going to take. Is that helpful? Okay.
Yeah. To add on, yeah. Thank you. To add on top of it, you really need to have a proper understanding. Why do you need the vertical slice? If it's to pitch the project to investors or publishers, that's one story. If you need a proof of concept,
That's important, yeah.
For your team, for the concept, that will be a completely different story, because the angle should be also different. Publishers, investors, they want to see one thing, and maybe the team has a different vision.
It's actually more for proof of concept and estimating the scope of the game as a whole after.
Okay.
Yeah, and fully listen to what the client is saying, not necessarily in the literal sense, but getting a feeling of what they actually want with that description. And sometimes those things are hard to do because, well, they are saying something, but that's not really what they want, right?
Yeah.
It's like you have to extract the juice for it and really understand, okay, this is what they are saying, and this is how we can make it happen. Not in the literal sense, but really understand what's behind that, what's their background and what they are talking about in terms of actual juice, I would call it.
Yeah, you have to break bread.
Yes, like that you have to find the fun factor, and so that's why you're doing the vertical slice. So, and sometimes we have to tell the client that, okay, you are asking for like a lot of stuff, but will it prove that the game is fun, as Jeff was? It has to be fun. So maybe let's not put a lot of art. Let's just focus on the core loop, and then you can save costs. And okay, like it's fun, let's do more. If it's not fun, just cancel and do another prototype or vertical slice. So that's what we recommend.
Yeah, someone who pitches a lot, I'm sorry I'm jumping in so much in this. If you're pitching to get money or pitching to a publisher and making a vertical slice, do not art it. Because if you go too far, you'll show it to the production team. The production team will be like, oh, wow, this is great, I understand, it's art. It then goes to marketing, and marketing's like, yeah, their animations suck. Or they're this or that. I'm like, gray box it. You can show art over here. Show the art you can do, but do not hand over a vertical slice that then is going to go through an organization, because especially if it looks really good, but it's not done, and people are like, yeah, this is a little janky. It's hanging up. It's only 30 frames per second. It's just like, it's a vertical slice. How did this happen? So, yeah, don't go too far. We have one more question.
How to find right publisher to show the vertical slice? Because I met few, and they were like, okay, your game is great, but we are actually in some different type of games. So do you have some clues or tips for finding the right
What's the genre?
publisher?
What is the genre?
Single player action adventure RPG with TPP view. So it's a
Single-
premium game.
Yeah. Do a research. Try to find the publishers on Steam. Probably smaller ones that are focusing specifically on those types of games. Yeah. Reach out to them.
That's what I do.
Through LinkedIn.
Yeah, I simply go on Steam. plug it in, and see who's publishing those games.
So I invite you to see my game at the booth later on.
Okay.
Cool. All right, guys, thanks a lot. You have to run, but some people will be out there if anyone has any direct questions afterwards.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.